There's a power most people overlook, a power that can change your life, elevate your success, and strengthen your relationships. But here's the problem. Almost no one uses it. What is it? Silence. Yes, silence. And if you don't master it, in these 7 crucial situations, you could be sabotaging your own success without even realizing it. Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you'll understand why the most successful, the most respected, and the most influential people all know when to stay silent and how it gives them the edge in life. Let's dive in. We live in an era where everyone has an opinion and everyone has something to say. Social media, 24-hour news cycles, and constant notifications create a relentless stream of noise. Amid all this chaos, we have lost something invaluable, the power of silence. But silence is not merely the absence of sound. It is a force, a strategic tool. When mastered, it can transform your success, relationships, and personal growth. Today, I am going to share 7 key situations where silence is not just beneficial, but absolutely essential. These are moments where choosing to remain quiet can make all the difference. Let's begin with the first situation, when you lack all the facts. In the digital age, the temptation to immediately share thoughts, opinions, and judgments is overwhelming. But consider this. How many times have you spoken too soon only to realize later that you didn't have the full picture? How often have you jumped to conclusions only to discover you were completely mistaken? A truly wise person understands the power of saying, "I don't know." It takes confidence to admit that you might not have all the pieces of the puzzle. In such moments, silence becomes your greatest ally. It signals thoughtfulness, restraint, and wisdom, qualities that are rare and therefore highly valuable. Now, this doesn't mean you should never express your thoughts unless you are absolutely certain. Rather, it means pausing to ask yourself, do I have enough information to contribute meaningfully to this conversation? If the answer is no, silence is your best response. Success and personal development are not about always having the right answer. They are about recognizing when you don't. In these moments, silence becomes a tool for learning, growth, and trust building. When you remain silent, you create space for others to share insights, for you to listen and learn, and for a clearer understanding to emerge. True wisdom takes root in that space. Now, let's move on to the second situation where silence is crucial: when you are angry. Anger is a powerful emotion. It has fueled revolutions, driven change, and motivated people to correct injustices. But anger is like fire. When controlled, it can be a useful force, but when left unchecked, it can destroy everything in its path, including relationships, reputations, and opportunities. When we are angry, we are not thinking clearly. Our emotions are heightened, adrenaline is surging, and we are more likely to say things we later regret. Words that cannot be taken back. Words that can irreparably damage relationships. This is why, in moments of anger, silence becomes your strongest safeguard. It protects you from making impulsive mistakes, from speaking in ways that could burn bridges that took years to build. Now, you might be thinking, but sometimes we need to express our anger, we can't just suppress it. And you are absolutely right. The key is knowing when to speak and when to pause. I'm not saying you should never express your anger. What I am saying is this: there is a time and place for it, and that time is not in the heat of the moment. When anger strikes, your instinct may be to lash out, to make sure everyone knows exactly how you feel. But let me tell you, the most successful individuals, those who build strong relationships and accomplish great things, have learned to master this impulse. Rather than reacting immediately, they pause. They take a deep breath, allowing themselves time to cool down, and in that silence, wisdom begins to surface. Solutions start to emerge. Anger clouds judgment, making us see things in extremes, when in reality, the truth often lies in the shades of gray. By choosing silence in these moments, we gain perspective. We allow ourselves to see the bigger picture. More importantly, when you respond to anger with silence, you are not just protecting yourself, you are also defusing the situation. You are refusing to add fuel to the fire, creating an opportunity for resolution, understanding, and growth. Now, I won't pretend this is easy. Choosing silence when anger burns within you requires true strength and discipline, but it is a skill that will serve you in every area of life. Consider your personal relationships. How many arguments could be avoided if you simply took a moment of silence before responding? Think about your professional life. How many bridges could be preserved if you paused before sending that angry email? Silence in the face of anger is not a sign of weakness. It is a mark of wisdom, a demonstration of control over your emotions rather than being controlled by them. And that, my friends, is a position of real power. Because when you master your emotions, you master your life. You make decisions rooted in reason, not reaction. You respond thoughtfully instead of reacting impulsively. Now, let's move on to the third situation where silence is absolutely essential. When you feel tempted to make excuses. Excuses. They are like a pair of old, comfortable shoes, easy to slip into, familiar and reassuring. But let me tell you this, excuses are the building blocks of failure. Life will always present challenges. Obstacles are inevitable. And in those difficult moments, it is tempting to reach for an excuse. To say, it's not my fault, I had no choice, or there was nothing I could do. But here's the truth. Each time you make an excuse, you surrender your power. You are saying, I am not in control of my own life. I am at the mercy of my circumstances. And let me be clear, that is no way to live. That is certainly no way to succeed. This is why, when the urge to make an excuse arises, silence is your greatest ally. It gives you the chance to take responsibility, to own your situation, and to empower yourself to make a change. Now, I understand what you may be thinking. Sometimes things really are beyond our control. And you're right, sometimes life throws us curveballs we never saw coming. But here's the thing, even in those moments, making excuses doesn't help. Successful people don't waste time making excuses. They don't point fingers or play the blame game. Instead, they ask themselves, what can I learn from this? How can I grow from this? What can I do differently next time? And in that silence, in that moment of reflection, real growth begins. That's when solutions start to emerge. That's when you take control of your life. Think about it. How many times have you made an excuse only to later realize you missed an opportunity to grow? How often have you blamed circumstances only to see someone else succeed under the same conditions? When you choose silence over excuses, you are choosing responsibility, empowerment, and growth. And let me tell you, that choice is not always easy. It's much more comfortable to make excuses, shift blame, and avoid responsibility. But comfort, my friends, is the enemy of growth. It stands in the way of success. When you remain silent instead of making excuses, you are declaring, I am in control of my life. I am responsible for my success. I am capable of overcoming any obstacle. And that is a powerful statement. That's the mindset that leads to success. And that's the attitude that opens doors, creates opportunities, and turns dreams into reality. Now let's move on to the fourth situation where silence is absolutely crucial, when you're tempted to gossip. Gossip, it's everywhere, isn't it? In our workplaces, social circles, even within our families. It's like a sweet poison. Tempting, maybe even enjoyable in the moment, but ultimately toxic. Gossip might seem harmless. It might even feel good to be in the know or to have insider information. But let me tell you something. Gossip destroys. It destroys trust, damages relationships, and ruins reputations, not just of the person being talked about, but also of the person spreading it. That's why when you're tempted to gossip, silence is your best defense. It protects your relationships. It safeguards your integrity. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Sometimes we need to talk about others. How else can we process our experiences? And you're right. There are moments when discussing people is necessary, but there's a difference between having a constructive conversation and engaging in gossip. Gossip isn't about solving problems or improving situations. It's about making ourselves feel superior at someone else's expense. It's about boosting our own ego by tearing others down. And let me tell you, that's a dangerous game to play. When you choose silence over gossip, you are making a powerful statement. You are saying, I respect others, I value integrity, I am above petty talk, and in a world where gossip is all too common, that kind of integrity stands out. It gets noticed. It earns respect. Think about it. Who do you trust more? The person who always has the latest gossip, or the one who refuses to engage in such talk? Who would you rather work with? Who would you rather have as a friend? When you remain silent in the face of gossip, you are not just protecting others, you are protecting yourself. You are safeguarding your integrity. You are building a reputation as someone who can be trusted, someone who respects others, someone with class and dignity. And in the long run, that reputation is far more valuable than any fleeting satisfaction gossip may bring. Now, I won't say this is easy. In a world that thrives on gossip, choosing silence can be challenging. At times, it may even feel isolating. But let me tell you, it's worth it. Because when you refuse to engage in gossip, you create space for something better. You make room for genuine connections, meaningful conversations, and real relationships built on trust and mutual respect. And that, my friends, is where true success lies. Not in knowing the latest rumors, but in being known as a person of integrity. Not in tearing others down, but in lifting them up. Not in spreading negativity, but in fostering positivity. Now, let's move on to the fifth situation where silence is absolutely crucial. When you are tempted to interrupt. Interrupting, it's a habit that has become all too common in today's fast-paced world, isn't it? We're always in a rush, eager to make our point, quick to jump in with our own thoughts. But here's something to consider. Interrupting is more than just bad manners. It is a barrier to understanding. It is an obstacle to connection. It is a roadblock on the path to success. When we interrupt, we are not just cutting off someone's words. We are cutting off their thoughts, their ideas, their perspective. We are sending the message, what I have to say is more important than what you are saying. And that, my friends, is a dangerous message to send. That's why when you feel the urge to interrupt, silence is your greatest teacher. It gives you the chance to listen, to understand, to gain new perspectives. Now, I know what you might be thinking. Sometimes we need to interject. What if the other person is going off track? And you're right. There are times when it's appropriate to guide a conversation, but more often than not, our urge to interrupt comes from impatience, not necessity. Truly successful people understand the power of listening. They recognize that every person they meet knows something they don't. They see every conversation as an opportunity to learn, to grow, to expand their understanding. When you choose silence over interruption, you're making a powerful choice. You're choosing to be a learner rather than just a speaker. You're showing that you value others' perspectives as much as your own. You're choosing to be present, engaged, and truly connected in your conversations. And in a world where everyone is talking but few are truly listening, that kind of presence is rare. And rare things, my friends, are valuable. Think about it. Who do you enjoy talking to more? Someone who constantly interrupts and inserts their own thoughts? Or someone who genuinely listens, giving you the space to fully express yourself? When you practice silence instead of interrupting, you're not just being polite, you're building deeper connections, fostering understanding, and creating an environment where ideas can flourish, where creativity can thrive, and where real communication happens. And in business, relationships, and every area of life, that kind of environment is where success is born. Now, I won't say this is easy. In our fast-paced world, choosing to fully listen before responding can feel like swimming against the current. It requires patience, self-control, and a genuine interest in what others have to say. But let me tell you, it's worth it. Because when you give someone the gift of your full attention, when you create space for them to express themselves fully, you're not just showing respect. You're opening doors to new ideas, new perspectives, and new opportunities. And who knows? The very thought you were so eager to share might be transformed, refined, or even completely changed by what you hear when you choose to listen first. You see, silence in the face of the urge to interrupt isn't passive, it's active, it's engaged. It's a deliberate choice to be fully present, to absorb, and to understand. And that kind of presence, that kind of engagement, is what sets apart great communicators and extraordinary success stories. Now, let's move on to the sixth situation where silence is absolutely crucial: when you're receiving feedback. Feedback. It's a gift, isn't it? A gift that sometimes feels like a punch in the gut, Because let's face it, none of us likes to hear about our shortcomings, our mistakes, or the areas where we need to improve. But here's the truth. Feedback, even when it's tough to hear, is one of the most valuable tools for growth and success. It's like a mirror, not just reflecting who we are, but showing us who we could become. That's why, when you're receiving feedback, silence is your greatest ally. It's your chance to learn, to grow, to see yourself through someone else's eyes. Now, I know the instinct to defend yourself. What if the feedback is wrong? And you're right, sometimes it is. There are times when feedback might be misguided or based on incomplete information. But here's the thing, your first response, your immediate reaction should be silence. You see, when we receive feedback, our natural instinct is to defend ourselves, to explain, to justify. But in doing so, we often miss the valuable insights hidden within that feedback. When you choose silence in the face of criticism, you're making a powerful choice. You're choosing growth over ego. You're choosing improvement over defensiveness. You're choosing to be a lifelong learner rather than someone who believes they have it all figured out. And let me tell you, in a world where many resist feedback, that kind of openness to growth is rare. It's the hallmark of truly successful individuals. Think about it. Who do you respect more? Someone who always has an excuse, always has a defense, or someone who listens thoughtfully, considers feedback carefully, and uses it as a springboard for improvement? You see, when you remain silent in the face of feedback, you're not just being polite, you're creating space for reflection. You're giving yourself the opportunity to really hear what's being said, to consider it objectively, and to extract valuable lessons. And in that silence, real growth begins. That's where transformation starts to happen. That's where you unlock your full potential. Now, I'm not saying you should accept all feedback uncritically, not at all. But what I am saying is this: before you respond, before you defend, before you explain, pause. Be silent, listen, reflect. In that moment of silence, ask yourself, what can I learn from this feedback? Even if I disagree, is there a grain of truth here? How can I use this to improve? When you approach feedback with silence and reflection, you're not just improving yourself, you're also building stronger relationships. You're showing others that you value their input, that you're open to growth, and that you're committed to continuous improvement. And let me tell you, that kind of attitude separates the average from the extraordinary. It's what sets apart those who plateau from those who keep rising, keep growing, and keep achieving new levels of success. Now let's move on to the seventh and final situation where silence is absolutely crucial: when you're celebrating your achievements. Yes, you heard that right. Even in moments of triumph, silence has its place. Now, I'm not saying you shouldn't celebrate your successes. Of course, you should. Success should be acknowledged, should be savored. But there's a difference between quiet confidence and boastful pride. You see, when we achieve something great, it's tempting to shout it from the rooftops, to make sure everyone knows about our success. But let me tell you something. True success, lasting success, speaks for itself. It doesn't need a megaphone. When you choose silence in the face of your achievements, you're displaying a rare and valuable quality: humility. You're showing that you don't need constant validation from others. You're demonstrating that your satisfaction comes from the achievement itself, not from others' recognition of it. And in a world of social media, humble brags, and constant self-promotion, that kind of quiet confidence stands out. It commands respect. It inspires others. So there you have it. The 7 situations where silence isn't just golden, it's absolutely crucial. When you don't have all the facts, when you're angry, when you're tempted to make excuses, when you're tempted to gossip, when you're tempted to interrupt, when you're receiving feedback, when you're celebrating your achievements. Master the art of silence in these moments and watch as your life transforms. Watch as your relationships deepen, as your influence grows, and as your success reaches new heights. Because remember, in a world that never stops talking, the ability to be silent, truly silent, is a superpower. And it's a power that's within reach of every single one of you. Silence is not weakness, it's not avoidance, it's power. A power that can transform your relationships, strengthen your character, and unlock levels of success you never imagined. Because in a world that never stops talking, those who master the art of silence stand out. They command respect. They make wiser decisions. They grow. They succeed. They lead. They live. So starting today, pay attention. Pause before you react. Hold back when it matters most, and watch how your life begins to change. Now, if this message resonated with you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear this. And remember, true strength isn't always in the words you speak. Sometimes it's in the silence you choose.